All right. Hey, folks, this is our weekly webinar on Fridays. Today we have Bob with us instead of Tom. He's going to be taking the tax side of things, and I will, as always, kind of talk about the payroll towards the end. We're going to kind of just go through. Bob's going to run us through some of his awesome graphs and visuals, and I will be asking the questions and doing a little bit of banter. And then we will turn over, and at the end, I'm going to do a bit on the reports and payroll relief, how to access them, how to read your reports, that kind of thing. I'm intending to show a small demo in payroll relief. So Bob, if you want to take it away.
Okay. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about just the business health in general and how to assess it, how to measure things, how to compare yourself to your peers or your competitors, and what to do with that information. I guess the start with, can I afford X for my business, whatever that might be, expansion, new equipment, higher payroll for, or higher paycheck for the owners, whatever the case may be, the numbers have to be correct. They have to be accurately represented, and they have to be categorized properly in order to do that. But the end result is a much more simple to understand and comprehensive overview of the business and the business health, and a good indication of what direction to take it. One of the things, marketing expenses, are they worth it? We've done some analysis for a few different types of industries, and as the graph shows, and keep in mind, as far as the graph goes, the revenue created by the advertising spend has been time aligned for simplicity, and it's also been compressed. But the blue line is the revenue. The orange line is the spend, is the investment in the marketing. And you can see in both examples, they track pretty closely enough that you can tell if you spend the money, you'll get a bump. If you don't spend the money, you'll get a trough. So it's absolutely worth it. And in my opinion, it is one of the best indicator of growth and profitability if it's measured properly. We've been using it for years at the prompt of one of our large customers, and it really does work.
Could I ask a question, Bob?
You can.
What causes marketing to be so closely tied to revenue? Is it exposure? Is it what exactly causes that?
Okay, one thing I didn't cover is the fact that it needs to be a good campaign. And there are ways to determine that too. If you're marketing through Facebook or through Google or online anywhere, the metrics can be measured and represented, and it's very quantifiable and it is very repeatable. If, for example, your industry calls for a $45 cost per qualified lead, so if you spend $90, you'll get two qualified leads, not tire kickers. Then we can measure that campaign against the previous campaign and project for future campaigns. If your cost per qualified lead for the industry is $45 and you're spending about $90, it's not a great campaign. You can do better with your money by adjusting some things. So there are a lot of criteria that would lead you to be able to leverage this up and perform better.
Okay, all right.
As far as the measuring the marketing success, I explained a little bit about it, but we look at the close ratio, we look at the cost per qualified lead, we look at attrition. Those clients or customers who don't, they go somewhere else, they don't stay out their life expectancy. And what's an acceptable number, and then how to deal with an excessive amount of attrition. Um, the One of the other big things that you can do as far as putting more profit on the bottom line, getting the best performance out of your business and out of your employees, and rewarding them so that everybody makes more money, is investing in your employees. We've done these studies for several industries, or a few industries at least, And the results are the same every time with a good bonus program or incentive program of some type. The labor cost drops dramatically, where the labor cost here is probably averaging about 50 to 52% for those without a bonus program. And these are real examples. The gross sales have been normalized so that the comparison is easy to see. But the shops that are using a good bonus program, it's far below the norm. And that's real money, and it's a result of paying out more, but you need to engineer it so that you're getting the results, a better result from your employees for the bonus paid out.
So is the goal then to, make sure that the bonus program is good, keeps your employees in place and reduces turnover to reduce costs?
It can do all of that. Yeah, yeah. What it will do is it'll increase the efficiencies, the people striving for the bonus, which would be probably 70 to 80% of your workforce. They're going to be more autonomous. They're going to self-manage, and they're going to strive for that. So they'll work a little bit harder and get considerably more reward for that. And then, as long as it's put together properly, the owner, the business will net a greater savings because you're not spending a fortune on people not doing a lot of work. Expanding service offerings, that's another way to grow the business. And really that really will come from a decision as to the direction that you want to go in to help clarify the direction. Some analysis and a look at the business performance and where it is lacking. That's a good way to determine if a service needs to be offered, if a new territory needs to be acquired, if the expansion is good, and so forth. Always make a plan before the expansion and expect that it's not going to go to plan. One thing that I can emphasize from personal experience and from seeing, a lot of our clients growing the business, don't take your eye off the business that got you there. The shiny new object, the new business you start up, that can take a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of money. But if you take your attention away from your main business or the business that you've established, you'll see the difference, and you'll have some issues. So just keep in mind that you need to pay attention to the original one. Growing the business or expanding or adding another location, it won't help the business if you're at a loss, or if you're it's not gonna, the scale up will not necessarily translate into more efficiencies. You have to make sure the business is efficient to start with. My advice would be to make your current business work and stay in the numbers. Make sure that you're benchmarked against your peers or against your competitors, that you've got good solid numbers before you go into the next venture, because you'll be able to translate that good behavior and that good result to the new business. Will you be able to scale? As long as you're solid and in the numbers in your current business, you should be able to replicate that, keeping in mind, everything, location, personnel, so forth. Can you find the right people to help you succeed? Will you be stretched too thin? There are ways to make sure that you have enough operating capital. Approached intelligently, loans and funding and lines of credit are not out of range for most business owners, no matter the credit standing and so forth. Just have to approach it the right way and make sure you use the right strategies to acquire that at the lowest possible rate. One of the starting points that we use is we do a full financial analysis. We benchmark the business against their peers or their competitors, and the break even and the incremental profit are two of the most important numbers. Your break even, if it's not accurate, you're fooling yourself. You're either over or under, and you're not really being effective as far as knowing where you are, and you can't predict the results. The incremental profit in this context is um, assuming you don't make any money till you hit break even. How much over break even? How much do you get to keep of those dollars? It can be a surprisingly low percentage depending on your mix of fixed and variable expenses and so forth. But those are two key numbers to determine which will impact your current business, and then you can translate that over to an expansion as well.
Let's say I was running payroll, Bob, and a couple, pay periods I didn't have the funds to, pay folks. And so I took my own funds and deposited them into my business and used that to pay out those employees. Would that mess up these ratios?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. That's a great question. If if you're put and look, almost everyone does that. You run short of funds, you have to meet payroll on time. Everybody's got to get paid. You put some money in your bank account, it goes into the deposits like everything else. If it's not recognized by whoever's doing the books, you paid money on that. You paid tax on that money already. You're getting ready to pay tax on it again, right? That's one of the worst situations. It will dilute your ratios if you have if you're shooting for 35% cost of labor, and you've got an over reported revenue. It's going to be a lower cost of labor. You're going to think you're in the pink. You're going to think you're doing everything right. And the bottom line is you may be at or worse than your projection. And the money that your books are showing, it's not in the bank account. And that's one of the first ways, one of the best ways to tell that something's off.
Scroll down for you here.
So as I mentioned before, taking the temperature of the business, seeing how the health of the business is, benchmarking is where we start. We'll look at competitors and make sure that your ratios are in the range. What are your peers and competitors doing differently, and how is it impacting the P&L? How is it impacting the operations? Are you spending too much in the wrong places? One way on the back end to address that is, are you structured properly with an S corp election in the right place can save you tens of thousands of dollars, literally. Tax credits, are you taking advantage of all the advantages that or the options that the federal government is offering right now? They have a government funded retirement program. They'll give you a considerable amount. They'll give you $5,000, up to $5,000 per year for the administration of the plan, and up to $1,000 per employee for the employer match for 5 years. So there's a health insurance program that is not as robust, but it's pretty good. They'll give you up to 50% of your premium back in a tax credit. Both of these programs work off a tax credit. Doesn't matter if you don't make money, you carry that forward to the next year and use it. You won't lose it. So there are some ways to leverage up your profitability and leverage down your acquisition costs of some of the more premium perks that can help eliminate or reduce the turnover. And that comes with a reduction in the costs of recruiting, vetting, training new employees, only to see them leave prematurely. So
does this kind of go hand in hand with the bonus program then? This is sort of a way to clamp down on those labor costs.
This is the second and third leg on that
Okay,
on that
right.
program. Yeah, these are implemented properly. These could really make a huge difference in the amount of, if turnover is an issue, if acquiring career-minded people, professionals is an issue, it can take care of a lot of things. And in some cases, several cases, we've been able to take funds from the recruitment and put it into this, so there wasn't any extra money spent.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
smart. That's smart.
Where do I find benchmarking data? We've got it. But beyond that, we use the software that merges with QuickBooks and some others that we can plug the business in, map the data over, and it will give us some proprietary reports for the business, including, KPI reports if you use which you should be using. But for example, the top 10 expenses, um, we we look at the things that are impactful on the P&L and the balance sheet, and we'll start there, and we can include those reports with our service. So it's a good place for you to look rather than looking at a P&L that might have 100 or 150 line items in the chart of accounts. They're not all impacting the business at any given time. Only a few are making a positive or negative impact. This gets you the shortcut to look at the areas of the P&L that are making an impact. Are your financials accurate enough for comparison to my peers and competitors? They should be. It's not that hard. Some firms might have a difficult time in making them accurate, but you'll see a huge difference in what you're looking at, and more consistency in the numbers and the accuracy of the data once they're done right.
All right, and then this is my segue into my payroll topics. I know we kind of did a rundown of a lot of this prior, but I do just kind of want to send some reminders out. When it comes to W-2s and 1099s, make sure you're classifying folks correctly. Those 1099s, we had recent things going on where folks have, a couple people who they categorize as both. And that can be a big red flag to the IRS. So just really make sure that you're going through, making sure that, your staff are on your W-2s, your contractors, your rent, that's all the 1099s should be separate. Like we were talking about, you got all those benefits, bonuses, and vacation. You want to make sure those are set up and compliant in your payroll programs. Make sure that they're pulling funds correctly, they're depositing funds correctly, all that good stuff. We have a payroll program that can track your PTO and all that. So if you're not tracking it at the current moment, we can help you out with that. But you should be tracking that, making sure you're knowing how much they're gaining. I've seen a ton of folks in the past where they're not really sure what their employees' leave is, and it's kind of loosey-goosey, and then you start having issues with, time theft, basically. I mean, I hate to be that way, but that is a real problem, and you don't want to be losing money to that. If you're interested in any sort of timekeeping tips, last week's webinar did focus heavily on timekeeping, and just to kind of rerun down, we're really trying to encourage people not to be doing all this on paper anymore. We want it all being tracked on, your program, some sort of something that you can clock in and out of. It's just a way better method than writing things down on paper, because things like PTO compliance, they can get really messy when you've got one sheet of paper over here that says someone's got 8 hours, one sheet of paper over here that says somebody's got 6. So like I had previously mentioned in prior weeks, try to be getting that timekeeping onto a more unified system. And then the other thing that we really want to harp on is if you have employees in multiple states, there can be all kinds of things that can be, problematic. So, for example, if you have an employee, you're in Kentucky, you're working in Kentucky, and then someone from Indiana right across the border comes into Kentucky and starts working for you, you do actually need to register with Indiana state for payroll taxes. And it does vary from state to state. These things change all the time. So you just want to make sure if you do have multiple state employees, you don't want to just be assuming that everything is the same. I got folks in Illinois, it's going to be the same for Missouri. No, you don't want to do that. Make sure you're checking all the complexities, make sure there's no local taxes. There can be a slew of differences. We've got 50 governments all doing slightly different things under one country. So just make sure that if you've got several states of employees, that you're not just taking the default assumption. Now, give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen on a different document here, and I'm going to go through the boring part, which would be how to read reports. So this is kind of the same thing we talked about on the other one. So I just kind of want to go through payroll reliefs reports. We've had some folks who've been trying to read reports and maybe reading the report, seeing the wrong info. There's a ton of different reports in the system, so I 100% understand. You open one report, it seems like it's the same thing as prior, and you get confused, write down the wrong number, and now the taxes are slightly off. So the goal here is just to kind of give you a rundown of what it looks like, and then once I kind of show the pictures, I do kind of want to pull up payroll relief. I'm going to open up our test environment, and then I am just going to kind of click around, show you what the reports look like, how to read them, that kind of thing. So first things first, if you are using our payroll relief system, The reports are kind of hidden. They're on this right side. A lot of times folks come looking on the left side where all our obvious stuff is. But this little piece of paper in the right corner that I have circled here, you'll click that and it basically will pull up this whole menu. The really important ones that I use day to day and I send to folks all the time are going to be your payroll history reports. So that can be a huge report all the way back to like the beginning of the year. You can basically set those parameters however you want. These are really good for like audits, stuff like that, a work comp audit where they're wanting to know, hey, what was your payroll like from 12/10/24 to 12/10/25? And then you can put those values in, pull that whole report, and then provide it to the person who's auditing you and go, hey, there you go. Boom, problem solved. Um, Payroll summary reports are kind of the same thing. They're smaller, they're for one pay period. So if you're thinking, hey, I don't know why those taxes look different, I don't know why XYZ look different, you can pull those summary reports, should detail everything. And then if you're still confused, you can highlight it and say, hey, what's going on with this number? Why does this not look the same as usual? And then a lot of the times it's as simple as, payroll relief has all these crazy algorithms. They calculate your tax out, changes from year to year. Might be something like that, but we can help you decipher it if you were unable to decipher it yourself. But yeah, that basically handles just a pay period as opposed to payroll history covering an entire period, from years to quarters to whatever you're hoping for. The tax and liabilities payments are going to show you, what's going on in the tax side of things. If you got things due, they have filings coming up. I use that one all the time. That is a super handy one, especially if, you've got manual taxes or anything like that, where you're logging into a program and trying to type things in. So you're able to pull that up, see your taxes. I know a lot of our clients, we're pretty much e-filing and handling that on their end, but if we're not, very helpful report. Or if you're just worried about things coming up and want to see, hey, how much money is going to be coming out of my account here soon going to the government, you got your tax liabilities and payments report. Also had some folks asking how they can check what is being contributed to employees' 401ks. Some of those benefits Bob and I were talking about earlier. In our system, there's a retirement contributions report. You can click that. It's going to pull up your 401k. It's going to show you how much you deposited to each employee, all that good stuff. And then last but not least, I really do recommend folks check the employee list. We do have a lot of clients who people kind of blow in and out. And so unless you're telling me, hey, this person's been terminated, I'm assuming they're still blowing in and out. I don't want to, take someone off your list who's just sort of intermittent. So if you would review those lists and just let us know, hey, Steve doesn't work for me anymore, then we can peel them off and get them out of your way and make your sheets a little cleaner. Something just to mention about the work comps, though, I mentioned the audits. The audits, their mistakes do happen. Just keep in mind that overtime hours, they are recorded as regular hours. So they're not getting all those extra premium. They're really wanting to make sure that the premiums paid for workers' comp do not exceed the actual cost of the employee's work, essentially. Just wanted to throw that in there. Over here is where you locate your tax information. So if you're pulling that tax and liabilities reports, left-hand side, got your payments on the top, forms on the bottom. I find forms to be a little more useful. They typically list your payments as well. Payments, I kind of think is a little more for our end of things because it allows me to see, hey, so-and-so's, form filed, payment didn't happen, what's going on? And then we can troubleshoot that. But if you are wanting to know what payments are coming up and maybe something's already been filed, that's a good place to go. I do just think that tax forms is really nice because you can go pull a whole 941 from it. And honestly, this is another good place for your audits. You're able to go through pull 941s, pull, W10P10s if you're local to St. Louis. You're able to pull basically all your tax forms and then provide them to whoever's auditing you and then problem solved. However, just a note, if you weren't in payroll relief, say, you're in QuickBooks for 3 years and you came over and you were added to payroll relief, you would still want your QuickBooks access because we're not going to have, prior tax forms. Just a note. And last but not least, just to check over your payroll reports, you can always go to payroll processing. And in that payroll processing, there is going to be, and I will show you this here in just 1 second, there is going to be a details section essentially that allows you to check everything that happened in the last payroll. So let me get us logged into payroll relief. I will give kind of a brief tour. Let me stop sharing this screen as well. and then I'll let everyone go. Let's get my test environment, and I just want to be clear, this isn't a real client or anything like that. Don't want to show anybody's info. This is our test environment in payroll relief. Hence why you'll see our friend Connor's name up here as if he was in charge of this business. So this is the reporting section. I did just have a small technical issue, so if this cut around too much, I apologize. I'm going to take us back to the home screen. I'm going to go into payroll relief, payroll reports. So like I said prior, you're going to go over here to this side. You're going to be able to pull all kinds of reports from here. For this example, I'm going to go with payroll history. Like I said, you can pretty much designate any time period for these reports, but we're going to go with this year. Then we're going to pull a report. Oh, you know what? This is a bad example. Let's do last year. Pull that report. So, got our friend here, Joe, C bartender, and his wages are displayed here along with his hours, his tips. Got all his taxes in this column, the amount that went to those taxes. Got his 401k, his deductions here, all that good stuff. But yeah, this is basically, if you had more employees, you'd have all these details for each employee, and then down here you'd get all your totals, which is a really nice way to just figure out things like, hey, how much did payroll cost me this year, or all kinds of stuff like that. So I really recommend this payroll history report, just as sort of a general overview report. I do recommend that you go out around and poke through these systems in payroll relief because it is never going to mess anything up if you want to run some reports, look some things up. If you're not sure what things do, like you're like, eh, what's going on with my local state wages? Go for it. Feel free to play around. This report set actually generates a lot of the ones that I kind of designated as the important ones. So if you want a really quick report set, you can do that. I do believe we can adjust those report sets for you. So if you ever got to a point where you're like, hey, I want my taxable wages included in there, we could add that, all kinds of stuff like that. It's customizable. So the other thing I wanted to go over was everything on the left-hand side here. So let me go back real quick. So you got your payroll processing. You're going to go over here to payroll entry, and then you're going to go over to, oh, you know what? This is a current contractor. We don't want that. We want an approved payroll. I'm going to go here. Can check out, Joe had 50 hours. So what exactly was going on with Joe? So we'll go actually to print checks, or actually, I'm sorry, payroll review, go to details, and boom, we can see Joe had 50 hours, totaled him in that many wages. That was his net pay. You can click on him for further details. Again, similar to payroll history report, but this is just going to be for his most recent paycheck. That's a really useful tab if you're ever wondering what happened to funds. Tax payments, like I said, probably not as useful for you guys, although you can see, oh, shoot, I got all these taxes due, which you can also see here. If you go to file tax forms, open the forms up, and boom, there's my $0 in taxes owned for our pretend business here. So these are all just a really helpful spot. I highly recommend clicking around in payroll relief and pulling reports and just kind of playing with it. The only thing you ever need to be worried about affecting things in payroll relief is this payroll entry screen. So as long as you're not messing with that, everything's probably fine. I wouldn't tweak your profile taxes or anything like that. We'd like to have eyes on that just to make sure, everything is compliant. But other than that, you are free to play with whatever you want in this system. You are free to go through and, check out your pay schedules. You're free to check out your deductions. Like, feel free to poke around. If you ever have any questions about the payroll relief system, we can answer them. We're playing with this system all the time. Odds are we've done whatever you're trying to do. So please just reach out if there are any problems. And with that, I will stop boring you with the reports.